April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. And we're all familiar with these lines. That, of course, is T.S. Eliot, man of two continents, a prodigious poet who wrote relatively few creative works, prolific literary critic, bank employee, and a Nobel laureate. Now, his name with writers such as James Joyce and Virginia Woolf has come to define British modernist fiction. Eliot's most famous pieces, such as the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock and The Wasteland, are among the most widely taught and studied poems in English literature, and remains one of the most influential poets of the 20th century. I've been invited by Paraz to read excerpts from both these poems to celebrate his birthday and applaud his creative genius. Although he wrote much of his famous work in Europe, Thomas Stearns Eliot was born in St. Louis, Missouri, to a bourgeois family from Boston on September 26, 1888. The spirit of his American upbringing never really left him, and he later wrote that his poetry would have been quite different if he was born in England. Coming back to the wasteland. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory with desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us. Coming over the Starnbergese with a shower of rain, we stopped in the colonnade, went on in sunlight, into the Hofgarten, drank coffee, talked for an hour. Bin gar keine Russen, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. When we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out in a sled, and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. Down we went. In the mountains. There you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. In 1906, Eliot matriculated at Harvard, where he studied English and French literature, German grammar, medieval history, philosophy, as well as Sanskrit. You may have noticed that German line in the stanza that I just recited. In 1914, he won a fellowship that allowed him to study at Merton College, Oxford. He never liked Oxford much. According to him, it's very pretty, but I don't like to be dead. The next year, he left Oxford for London. He taught at a grammar school for a while, then obtained a position at Lloyd's Bank. Now, he had to keep up with the London social circle, but part of him always wanted to escape, a way to elude his official self. His nephew, Graham Bruce Fletcher, remembers Uncle Tom taking him as a boy to a London joke shop in the 60s. Apparently, they bought stink bombs, let them off at the entrance of Bedford Hotel, not far from Eliot's workplace in Bloomsbury's Russell Square. With a fit of giggles, Eliot and his nephew sped from the scene of crime, Eliot twirling his walking stick in the manner of Charlie Chaplin, apparently. In the June of 1915, Eliot married the vivacious Vivian Highwood, perhaps to solidify his new life in London. The marriage, however, proved to be acidic, disastrous for them both. More than half a century later, it was caricatured Hollywood style in this movie called Tom and Viv. For Eliot, as he put it in the 1960s, marriage to Vivian brought the state of mind out of which came the wasteland. Eventually, painfully, they separated. Vivian ended her days in a mental asylum in 1947. I love Tom, she once wrote, in a manner that destroys us both. Perhaps she was the hyacinth girl. You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak. My eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence. My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. stay with me. Speak to me. Why'd you never speak? Speak. What you thinking? What? Thinking? What? I never know what you're thinking. Think! I think we're in Rat's Alley, where the dead men lost their bones. What's that noise? The wind under the door. What's that noise now? What's the wind doing? Nothing again. Nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head? Much of the Wasteland was written during the aftermath of the First World War. In Europe, the poem was heard less as Eliot's rhythmic grumbling, more as a lament for modern European civilization. It draws much of its symbolism and narrative framework from the mythological story of Jesus Christ, the quest for the Holy Grail. The poem presents a bleak and gloomy picture of the human predicament in the 20th century. In a way, it presents the disillusionment of a generation. The gloom and despair of the poet are mirrored in the poem. Wasteland is a poem in 5 parts. It was considered groundbreaking in establishing this form of fragmented modern poem. And these fragmented poems are characterized by jarring jumps in perspective, imagery, setting of subject. Now, despite this fragmentation of form, the Wasteland is unified by its theme of despair. Its opening lines introduce the idea of life's ultimate futility, despite momentary flashes of hope. The poem goes on to present a sequence of short sketches following an individual's baffled search for spiritual peace. It concludes with resignation at the never-ending nature of this search. What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down so. What shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? The hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4. We should play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. Now, the title Game of Chess suggests that intimacy and love have become a matter of intrigue, a matter of moves and counter-moves, a source of momentary pleasure, a sordid game of seduction and exploitation of the innocent. At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, throbbing, waiting, at the violet hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea, the typist home at tea time, clears a breakfast, lights a stove, and lays out food in tins, as the window perilously spread her drying combinations, touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan are piled at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays. He, the young man carbuncular, arrives a small house agent's clerk with one bald stag, one of the lone whom assurance sits, like a silk hat, on a Bradford millionaire. The time is not propitious, as he guesses. The meal is ended, she's bored and tired, endeavours to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved. If undesired, flushed and decided, he assaults at once, exploring hands encounter no defence. His vanity requires no response, and makes a welcome of indifference. Bestows one final patronizing kiss, and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of a departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done, and I'm glad it's over. And the lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone. She smooths her hair with automatic hand, puts a record on the gramophone. That is bleak. Not much has changed, has it? Well, the poem also makes promise and prophecy. It suggests that regeneration is possible. In the world of today, one cannot ignore the social, secular, commercial, and technical compulsions of the modern world. Yet Eliot attempts to end it on a positive note. In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing, he said. I've heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only. The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and sword. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Internationally lauded. He's been awarded numerous prizes. First of all, the Nobel Prize, the Dante Gold Medal, the Goethe Prize, the US Medal of Freedom, as well as the British Orderof Merit. Now, we all know him as a poet, not just of Prufrock, Wasteland and 4 quartets, but also of plays like Murder at the Cathedral, The Cocktail Party. These plays have done phenomenally well at the Edinburgh Festival, in London, and on Broadway. With school children relish Macavity, one of the poems from his old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. Now, did you know that Cats the musical was based on these poems? I absolutely adore Cats. And suddenly, snatches of Macavity have come to me. Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity's not there. You may seek him in the basement. You may look up in the air. I tell you once and once again, Macavity's not there. Isn't that delightful? But so many years later, difficult is the word we associate with his verse. Yeah, we quote him all the time. Not with a bang, but with whimper. That is the last line of Eliot's poem, The Hollow Men. We just spoke about April being the cruelest month. And who can forget the strangeness of the patient etherized upon a table, the start of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Eliot's mastery of the pliancy of language gives his poetry an insistency of sound and image that seems ineradicable. Let us go then, you and I. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless night in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent. To lead you to an overwhelming question, or do not ask what is it, let us go and make our visit. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains. Let fall upon it back the soot that falls from the chimneys. Slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once upon the house, curled once about the house, and fell asleep. Those are lovely words. And indeed, there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you, time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and time for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They'll say how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They'll say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute, there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. For I've known them all already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, and afternoons. I've measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voice is dying with a dying fall. Beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? Shall I say I've gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of the windows? Should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? Would it have been worth it after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me? Would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I should tell you all, if one, settling a pillow by a head, should say, that is not what I meant at all, that is not it at all. I grow old. I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I've heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think they will sing to me. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Now, because this is Parvaz, and because we have to speak of Eliot and his various influences, let me share a little nugget with you. और चूंकि मैं परवाज़ की जानिब से आप सबसे मुखातिब हूँ, तो थोड़ी सी बात गुलजार की होना या फिर गालिब की होना लाजिम है। बकौल गुलजार साहब खुद वो एलियट के काम से काफ़ी मुतासिर रहे हैं. So a line that I just recited a short while ago, streets that follow like a tedious argument, कहीं बल्ली मारा के महल्ले की वो पेचीदा दलीलों की सी गलियां तो नहीं? थोड़ा माहौल बना लिया जाए. बल्ली मारा के महल्ले की वो पेचीदा दलीलों की सी गलियां, सामने टाल के नुक्कड़ पे बटेरों के कसीदे, गुड़गुड़ाती हुई पान की पीकों में वो दाद, वो वाह वाह, चंद दरवाजों पे लटके हुए बोसीदा से कुछ टाट के पर्दे, एक बकरी के ममियाने की आवाज़, एक बकरी के ममियाने की आवाज़ और धुंधलाई हुई शाम के बेनूर अंधेरे, ऐसे दीवारों से मुंह जोड़ कर चलते हैं यहाँ, चूड़ीवाला के कटरे की बड़ी भी जैसे, अपनी बुझती हुई आंखों से दरवाजे टटोले. आपकी तवज्जो के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you very much. T.S. Eliot died on 4th January 1965 at his home in Kensington. And we shall all remember him for all the wonderful work that he did and for all the inspiration